Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into, well, a pretty complex area, the global spirits industry.
We are.
And we're looking at a really interesting intersection. How does that specialized retail world, the places with real expertise, interact with serious environmental innovation in how spirits are actually made?
Exactly. That's the mission today. We're looking at sources connecting two quite different players. On one hand, Denmark's biggest whiskey retailer, Whisky.dk, and on the other, Ireland's Ahascragh Distillery, which is doing something, well, pretty radical.
This deep dive isn't just about the whiskey itself.
No, not just that. It's about what happens when deep tradition meets a full-on commitment to zero emissions, and maybe whether these specialist retailers are the ones who ultimately push the industry towards a greener future.
Right. Okay. Let's start where the customer meets the bottle. Whisky.dk. Now, for anyone listening who isn't familiar, this isn't your average liquor store, is it?
Not at all. Founded back in 2012 by Ulrich Bertelsen and Henrik Olsen.
Started online, I think?
Yeah, began as an online thing, but it just exploded. Now they've got this enormous physical showroom, like 500 square meters, down near Colding.
Wow.
And that physical presence, it's important. They stock everything: Scotch, Japanese whiskey, Irish, obviously, but also rum, gin, cognac, tequila, the works.
But it's not just about having a lot of bottles on the shelf.
No, that's the key point. Their whole value proposition and why a place like Ahascragh would want to be featured there isn't just the range, it's the knowledge. They run tastings, master classes. They really vet what they sell.
So they act as a kind of filter, a trusted guide for the consumer.
Precisely. They're essentially saying, look, this new producer, they're worth paying attention to, they're worth the premium, and here's why.
That makes a lot of sense, especially now with so many brands out there. You need that guidance.
You do. They're a gateway.
And one of the producers they're highlighting now is this Ahascragh Distillery over in County Galway, Ireland.
Right. And this is where we pivot from the retail expertise to the engineering side of things.
Okay.
Ahascragh, founded just a few years ago, 2018, by Gareth and Michelle McAllister.
And it started as sort of a retirement project.
Kind of, yeah. A passion project for them, but it seems it quickly became something much, much bigger. A real pioneering environmental effort driven by, well, vision, I suppose.
So what makes it stand out so much? Why is it getting this attention?
Well, the headline fact is Ahascragh is Ireland's first zero-emissions whiskey and gin distillery.
First. That's a huge claim.
It really is. And what's fascinating, connecting back to tradition, is they didn't just build some new factory. They took a beautiful old 19th century flour mill and restored it, built the distillery inside that structure. Yeah. So you have this incredible blend of Irish heritage and, very modern environmental necessity.
Just restoring the mill is a statement in itself, isn't it? Yeah. But, okay, let's get into the details. Distilleries use a ton of energy, mostly heat for distillation. How on earth do you get to zero emissions? No fossil fuels, no offsets.
That's the core question, isn't it? And this is where the tech gets really interesting. The sources are clear. They run entirely on renewable energy.
Specifically
wind and solar power.
So no gas boilers at all. Yeah. That's fundamentally different.
Zero reliance on fossil fuels in the production process itself. The absolute key is this very advanced high-temperature heat pump system they've installed, and it's linked to thermal storage.
Okay, break that down a bit. High-temperature heat pump.
Yeah, think of it like a super efficient air conditioner running in reverse, but on an industrial scale.
Right.
It uses electricity generated from their wind and solar sources to run the pump. The pump then takes ambient heat, concentrates it, compresses it, basically, to get the incredibly high temperatures needed for distillation.
Instead of burning gas to make steam.
Exactly. And that generated heat, it's stored in their thermal storage system so they can use it whenever they need it for heating, cooling, the actual distillation runs, all without burning fossil fuels and without any operational co-Euro note.
That really does sound like a potential blueprint for the future.
It establishes them as a working model, yes, a replicable one, potentially, for distilleries globally.
Okay, but I have to ask about the cost. Restoring an old mill, installing bespoke tech like that, it sounds incredibly expensive up front. Is this model actually scalable for, say, an old distillery in Scotland? Or is it only viable for a brand new high-concept project like this one?
That's a fair question, and it touches on market disruption. Yes, the initial capital expenditure, the CapEx, is definitely high.
Right.
But the flip side is the operational costs. You're moving away from volatile, often expensive fossil fuels towards predictable, renewable electricity costs. So long term, the sources suggest it offers financial stability.
And the marketing angle.
Oh, absolutely crucial. That zero emissions claim. It's a massive differentiator now. For a retailer like Whisky.dk, it helps de-risk stocking a new brand. They're not just selling flavor. They're selling this future-proof, responsible story that, frankly, can command a premium price.
So the green aspect isn't just about feeling good. It's a smart business strategy in a crowded market.
That link is key.
It is. But, okay, bottom line, it still has to be good spirits. Right? What are they actually producing with all this pioneering tech? I think there are 3 main lines.
Yes, 3 core lines. And they lean heavily into Irish mythology and history, which is neat. First up is Clan Colla Irish whiskey.
Okay.
This is their premium aged range. They have blends, single malts. It's named after the Colla brothers, legendary figures in Irish history, ancestors of many clans.
And you mentioned something about how it's bottled, non-chill filtered. Can you unpack that for us? Why does that detail matter?
Good point. So chill filtration is pretty common. You cool the whiskey way down and filter it to remove certain natural compounds, fatty acids, esters.
I do that.
It stops the whiskey going cloudy if you add ice or water. It's mainly cosmetic. But those compounds, they contribute a lot to the whiskey's texture, its mouthfeel, even complexity.
Yeah.
So by not chill filtering, like Clan Colla, Ahascragh leaves all that natural character in. You get a richer, often creamier feel, maybe deeper, more authentic flavors.
Got it. Makes sense. And the second line, UAIS. Am I saying that right?
Whoosh, yeah. UAI Irish whiskey. This one's designed to be more modern, showcasing the diversity within Irish whiskey itself.
So.
It's a triple blend, so it uses malt whiskey, grain whiskey, and importantly, pot still whiskey.
Pot still.
Yeah.
That's the uniquely Irish style, right? With unmalted barley.
Exactly. Made with both malted and unmalted barley, distilled in traditional copper pots, gives it that characteristic kind of oily texture, spicy notes. UAS blends all 3 styles together.
And the name, UAIS.
Named after a mythical Irish warrior. The idea is strength, harmony, reflecting how these different whiskey styles come together. It's quite contemporary.
Let's make this more concrete. The sources mention a specific bottling. The Clan Colla family bond, 13-year-old Oloroso cask finish. Tell us about that one.
Right. This is a great example of their premium approach. It's a mix of double distilled malt and grain whiskey. Okay.
Initially aged in standard bourbon casks gives it that vanilla oak structure. But then, the key part, it's finished in specific Oloroso sherry casks.
And Oloroso sherry casks, they bring particular flavors, don't they? Different from, say, a Pedro Ximénez cask.
Very different, yes. Oloroso tends to give you those darker, dried fruit notes, raisins, figs, plus nuttiness, spice. Pedro Ximénez, or PX, is much sweeter, more syrupy, think treacle molasses. This one uses Oloroso.
And the specs.
It's bottled at a decent strength, 46% ABV, non-chill filtered, as we discussed, and natural color. No E150A caramel coloring added.
Okay, the payoff. What does it actually taste like, according to the sources?
Well, the description sounds pretty appealing. On the nose, you get layers, dark fruits, raisins, figs again, but also honey, vanilla, some subtle spice, maybe a bit of both.
Sounds rich.
Definitely. And the palate is described as really creamy, full-bodied, almost chewy, lots of concentrated flavors coming through caramelized fruit, dark chocolate, candied orange peel. It sounds like a complex sipper. You can see how that meticulous process, from the zero emissions start right through to the cask choice, targets that premium customer shopping at places like Whisky.dk.
Absolutely. And the finish. Described as long, warming, dry, with notes of nuts and spiced wood lingering. It's clear they want this 13-year-old, with its specific cask number on the bottle, to show that their environmental commitment goes hand in hand with real craftsmanship. No compromise on quality.
Let's shift focus slightly from the liquid itself to the place. Ahascragh isn't just a factory. It seems they've built it as a destination.
Yes, that's a big part of it. Leveraging the history of that old mill and the whole innovation story, they offer guided tours.
What do they cover?
The whole process, really. Grain to glass, you learn about the distillation, obviously, the sustainable tech, but also the history of the mill itself, the McAllister story.
And tastings, presumably.
Of course. It ends with sampling their spirits.
And it sounds like they've invested quite a bit in the visitor facilities, too.
They have. There's the old mill shop and cafe for something casual, but also the Clan Colla restaurant, which aims for fine dining using local ingredients.
Nice.
And they've made a point of making the whole visitor center accessible. It's clearly designed as a platform to tell their story, the history, the sustainability, and the premium quality, all in one place.
Okay, let's bring this all together. We started with the idea of the specialist retailer, Whisky.dk, validating this radical producer, Ahascragh. What's the main takeaway for our listener today?
I think the crucial point is viability. We've seen how they took a 19th century building and transformed it using state-of-the-art tech, like those heat pumps, into a zero-emissions facility. Ahascragh is proof, really, that you can make high-quality, complex spirits while being seriously environmentally responsible.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Not at all. In fact, they seem to enhance each other, especially when you have knowledgeable retailers like Whisky.dk championing what they do and explaining that story to consumers.
But let me push back slightly, play devil's advocate. Does the average premium spirits buyer really care enough about zero emissions compared to, say, the 200-year history of a famous Scottish distillery? Is this enough to truly disrupt the market?
That's a really important question. What the sources seem to suggest is that, yes, particularly at the higher end of the market, the kind of customer shopping at Whisky.dk, there's growing awareness and concern about climate issues.
So it's becoming a factor.
Increasingly. For this kind of discerning consumer, maybe that zero emissions status is the new kind of heritage. It shows a commitment not just to the past, but to the future. And that resonates.
That's an interesting way to frame it, sustainability as the new heritage. Okay, so given that these specialist stores like Whisky.dk are effectively educating consumers and bringing these innovative global spirits to market, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to consider.
What happens next? If these pioneering zero-emissions methods, like Ahascragh's, start becoming the expectation, the baseline, how quickly could that change the game for the big established players in Scotland, Japan, the U.S.? Will we see rapid adoption across the board, or will the traditional giants just rely on their history and market share until they're absolutely forced to adapt? Food for thought.